mediation, in a sense, has its own highlights and its own learning points. And I suppose there are three cases that particularly stand out for me as ones which have been very important. First of all, dealing with the process of mediation. Quite recently I was doing one in Milan, in Italy. It was a complex engineering dispute between Italian parties and English parties. And instead of having a conventional mediation with a joint meeting and then people going off to private meetings, we had about a 5-hour session with all of these very clued up engineers around a table talking about the design of a particular bit of equipment. And this was the first time they'd been able to talk together since the dispute had developed. And we found that there was just major differences between what they meant by design and design defect. And that didn't solve the case, but it then meant that after those 5 hours, we could go into a conventional sort of mediation. And although it didn't settle on the day, within a few days it had settled. And to me that was a very interesting highlight, in a sense, in that it demonstrated the flexibility of the process, that you have a structure in mind, but you can always adapt it to suit the particular case. So that was an interesting one for me. Secondly, in terms of the outcomes which you're aiming at, I was doing a large shipping one quite recently, and there was an issue in the case which had gone to arbitration about owners getting approval from oil majors for their ships. At the time that was a big issue in the shipping market. We got that issue sorted out in the mediation, but it was a long, difficult day. And in the course of it, it became clear that the parties were also worried about piracy risks sailing the particular routes used. So in the course of the mediation, we also got a protocol agreed about piracy risks. And then as the negotiations dragged on, we also realised that at least one party was worried about the long-term future of the contract. And so we began a discussion about whether the contract would be ended early. That did not conclude because it had to go to boards of directors on each side, but we were able to actually get that discussion going. So in the one mediation, we had settled the point that had gone to arbitration, the major dispute. We had agreed an amendment to a contract that dealt with a practical problem, and we had also opened up discussions about the future, the commercial future of the contract. And to me that's a highlight, because you reach a result which no judge or arbitrator could or should have ever reached. And that was the sort of power of the process in that case. And the last one, which I have particularly fond memories of, is really to do with commercial relationships. And this was a dispute between a small trading company in the energy sector and a very big player in the energy sector. The lawyers were absolutely in the trenches, fighting wars against each other, and during the mediation they were very stuck on the legal arguments. But it became clear that the case was not really about the legal arguments, it was about commercial relationship, because the small party was desperate to maintain its relationship with the larger party, almost regardless of the legal rights and wrongs. And once that became clear, we were able to come to a very satisfactory settlement. But the thing I really remember about it was at the end, I pulled out a bottle of wine and poured everyone a drink, and we were standing on a terrace overlooking the Thames. And as I refilled the glasses, I just heard the two principals, the decision makers, talking about the next bit of business. And again, that was just a wonderful example of what mediation can achieve, which other methods of dispute resolution wouldn't. So those for me are highlight cases, as it was. I mean, I've been immensely attracted by the flexibility and the fact that you can do things you couldn't do as an arbitrator or a judge. For me, I was interested in it right from the early 1980s when I heard about mediation, and then there was sort of excitement when I did the training. And I still feel that same sense of enthusiasm with each case that comes through the door. It's a real privilege that parties entrust you with that role, which is a difficult and sensitive role. And I still find the process itself very exciting. I like the problem-solving aspect of it. As a barrister, you can sometimes get stuck in a bit of an ivory tower thinking about academic legal things, but actually working with the commercial people and the lawyers, often from very different cultures and backgrounds, and trying to balance the legal and the commercial side is a sort of problem solving angle I love. And lastly, I just love the sense of resolution. At the end of a hard day of mediation, when the thing has settled and the parties are signing an agreement and you know they've put the dispute behind them and they can get on with the rest of their lives. It's probably knowing oneself, but I don't feel I have a very fixed style. I think it changes from case to case and from party to party. But there are some things which I suppose are regular features of how I work. First of all, I'm very keen on pre-mediation preparation and contact. And I think the phone call, normally to the lawyers on each side, is immensely important, because you not only deal with the mechanics of mediation, but I'm interested in exploring sensitive areas that may cause problems down the line, issues of authority, who's turning up, and also just what the expectations of the parties are. And I suppose it's the barrister training. I love getting immersed in the detail of the case and walking in feeling, I've really done my homework. So that preparation is quite distinctive with me. I'm a creature of my background, having been a barrister and a QC for a long time and now sitting as an arbitrator a lot. I'm of course interested in the legal issues and wanting to test with the parties, legal outcomes and the risks they're running. It's not my style to volunteer opinions on cases, so to that extent I suppose I'm not an evaluative mediator using the jargon people use. On the other hand, I think if people appoint me, they probably are expecting me to do some reality testing, to ask some difficult questions when they need to be asked about legal issues, and I think that's rather an important thing to do in the private sessions. So it's, to me, challenging people's legal analysis and their expectations is quite a distinctive feature of my style. Also, I'm quite keen to have an idea of the process of managing the day. So I was talking about preparation first and then the legal aspects. And this next point is process management. And I very definitely, often early mid-afternoon, will say to the parties, we've got to move on and move from the legal analysis and debate and actually talk about the future and get involved in the negotiation process. And that is something which I very much think you have to be explicit about. You don't want to let the day drift by. And in terms of style, I enjoy that whole business of negotiation, talking to the parties about offers, how you structure them, how they're going to be received, and the actual numbers, I find very interesting. So that's an important part of the style. And I suppose the last bit is I'm not someone who locks people up in a room until they're settled. There are some people who I think might try and do that. But on the other hand, if I feel there's a chance that they're going to settle, then I'm very keen to persevere and to push on, to give them the best chance they've got to reach a settlement. So I tend to be quite tenacious in trying to get it, but I'm not going to keep people there if there isn't any prospect of it settling.